Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Vjal podcast. Very happy to see you again. I'm your host, Mark Troy, and as always, joined here by the founder of the Vjal Institute, Adi Burlia. Welcome, Adi. How are you?
Great to be here, Mark. Thank you once again for doing this. And of course, another insane week in AI. I don't think I've slept in the last 4 to 5 days. It's been quite an interesting week, and I think we have a couple of great days to go as well.
Look, I'm surprised that Adi's making time for us when he'd rather be playing with Fable 5. But before we get started, two things. One is don't forget to check out our website, vijal.ai, or email us at outreach@vijal.ai. So, Adi, we got a lot going on in AI this week. You're playing with Fable 5. I'm using it. Tell me what's going on with this and the new ChatGPT 5.6. What's up?
So, as a quick recap to ground people, Fable 5 came out weeks ago. It was amazing. I had an inkling that this might not last for a while, so kind of went all in for a couple of days. It was groundbreaking. It definitely pushed a lot of our AI ideas, workload systems to the next level, and then it got shut off. And then there
Yeah.
was like almost like a withdrawal that, oh my God, this model was that good. And on paper, it's maybe just 10% better. But
Mm,
that 10% is huge,
mm.
right? If you look at the entire marking systems, it doesn't look like a big leap, but it's actually a huge leap in actually being able to do, and that's the compounding effect. Now it comes out. We have a few hours left on the clock before Anthropic pulls it off. We're all hoping they kind of like say, haha, just kidding, here's an extension. But Anthropic wants to move it off their subscription plan and then offer it an API only. Now, API only is going to be absolutely unaffordable for most people. That's where the millions and millions of dollars in token costs. So we're all sort of racing to see how many cloud accounts we can burn through on Fable and just get as much out of it as well. The sad part is they did sort of nerf it down. It's not as great as the original one. As part of their deal, they had to put a lot more, protections in. I think they had to, purposely bring the model's abilities down. And of course, every 2 seconds, everything stops. So I haven't slept in 3, 4 days. Is every
Yeah.
15 minutes, it gives you an error saying, oh my God, safety, safety, safety. And hey, it may not be a safety issue, but we're going to tell you anyway. So, there is that trust issue that's happening there where people are like, well, I can't let this run. I have to babysit it. But it kind of gives you a preview of what the futures look like. Now, the good news for all of us, of course, is 5.6 is due out any day now.
From
OpenAI
ChatGPT.
had their week off,
Yeah.
and I think we're hopefully going to see that tomorrow or day after, if not sooner. And I think this is a nice jump off from Fable that, hey guys, Fable 5 ended and all. And the benchmarks are coming in. It's supposed to be a very good model. But at this rate, even if it comes in, at the Fable nerfed level or even a little bit, same level, a little bit higher, they have sent out some benchmarks, which have been pretty amazing. That would be fantastic. And so we're seeing for that transition, and I look forward to seeing, what we can build using that, both for enterprises and companies, but just on a day to day. That little extra intelligence goes a long way.
What can remind me of the name that the mere mortals like me will have access to? Is it Soul or Luna? I don't remember what the names are, dude.
So we covered this in our last episode. You had Luna, Terra, and Soul, and the hope is that we do get access to at least the Soul model. They might pull an Anthropic, which will be sad, but for a few days or at least at the higher tier levels. But even getting something like a Terra level model, where as you're seeing, although it so shows, hey, it was 60% on SV bench or something, and now it's 65 or 70. Those 5-10% leaps practically are huge. And I think
Hmm.
that is what, and that is what people are looking at, is at least a base model that we all can use every day. We're not fumbling around for Fable credits, that can actually drive things to the next level. And so it's going to be a very interesting time. And at the same time, we have, the open source models. Many of them have sort of caught up with, ChatGPT 5.5 and Opus 8. And so one hopes that in 2 to 3 months that the open source models will sort of give us Fable level, ChatGPT level 5.6 open, but without
Yeah.
us having to worry about, as you call it, fear theater, as people are now calling it.
Okay, great. Look forward to all that. Second story. Last week I was complaining about the rising cost of chips. I wasn't talking about Doritos. I was talking about Apple, Silicon, and others. I was in the store yesterday and I saw just since last week the prices spiked as promised. But there's a lot going on in the chip space, Broadcom and others. What's going on that we need to know about?
So a lot. I mean, obviously, and I think there you have OpenAI sort of beating their drum about their new chip. And to be fair, OpenAI has been doing a lot in terms of small upgrades for server systems, connectors, and all some of it is coming up. Of course, they launched their new chip, which is there, and now we have, of course, Anthropic saying, they're looking at. It's the early days, though the information I think has did an early report on this. This has been rumors for a custom manufacturer of their own AI chips. Google's have their own, Amazon, Microsoft, Meta, everybody's sort of on their own. And, part of this, Mark, is that we are thinking of this in terms of traditional supply chains. That
Mm,
here's the demand, here's the supply. But for many of these companies, if you take Grok with Elon, for example, this is a competitive advantage. And so it's almost like a hoarding problem right now, is that people are feeling that they're not going to have enough processors or chips to meet their ambitions of what they want to do in AI. Will that be a large company like Anthropic, which had to go to Elon and rent from him, or OpenAI, which is feeling that, hey, maybe we aren't able to secure these as well. But it's also just individual labs and consumers saying, look, we need to start hoarding. And so part of the problem is, just like in any time when you have people who are worried and concerned, they tend to hoard. And so even if there is enough chips to go around, there is enough AI capacity to go around. It's very unevenly distributed. And of course, people have gone into that hoarding mentality, and that's why you're seeing the prices rise. But then you see
yeah,
almost all the labs compelled to come up with their own chips. It helps that the AI is accelerating their ability to design these chips, right? It would take, I remember a time when it would take, a decade before somebody would think about, how to do a full new chip redesign, or, 5 years and then 2 years. And now you can pretty much get a custom chip in within about 3 months to 6 months, and that timeline is getting shorter and shorter. Remains to be seen where the manufacturing will be done. And the only thing that which I find interesting is that you have some labs which have wisened up and are going for the old 6 nanometer process, because they realize, hey, even if the chip is huge and fat, who cares? We can stack
yeah,
them, we can buy more land. Yes, there is a permitting issue, but at least we can get the chips manufactured. The 2 nanometer process is very difficult. It's Taiwan has a near monopoly. Very few other countries can even approach it, and that capacity is reserved for years onward. So it's an interesting time to see how people are willing to take a 1 or 2 generation old systems because they work now,
mm,
rather than say, okay, we have to remain at the cutting edge. And so I,
yeah.
I don't think, memory prices are going, or chip prices are going to get cheaper anytime soon for the rest of us, though.
Okay, good. Well, that's our second story. Third story of the day I want to get to is a front page article in the New York Times today about people complaining about the Chinese using distillation attacks, but also other AI companies are doing it as well. This combined with the amazing emergence of new models, what do we need to understand about this space and how AI is developed and people copying each other in the future of these models?
That's absolutely, Mark. So, I think people, and in specific certain companies are getting very, very antsy about their lead, right? So, if you look at what kicked this off, 2017, you have the Google attention paper. Attention is all you need. That sort of kicks off this. And what's happened is there's been a very nice culture, because it's going so fast, of companies and people and academia openly publishing their research, right? And so that's why you see even today, almost all the models almost prompt the same, because one, they kind of know what's the next obvious thing, so they all do the next obvious thing. But the second time, you have lots of papers and systems and all published, and this is very much, against the traditional, let's hoard this knowledge, let's be proprietary. And some of the labs are trying to do that. But you have all the other open source movements. Now, China, for better or worse, the nice part is the vast majority of their major models are open source. And so, in fact, the world is
Yeah,
depending on them to sort of push AI forward. OpenAI, Anthropic, Grok, all the major US models, with a few exceptions, are closed source. But in China, the state-of-the-art models are being kept open. Now, the cost of development of these models are really high. We had the DeepSeek moment where they came out with 10 or 11 amazing optimizations which crashed the prices, and which caused this arms race to kick off, because now you didn't need 100 million per training. It's 500,000 to $1 million per training. And the talent war is what sort of kicked off in phase two.
Yeah.
But this also means every other AI company uses each other's models to
Yeah.
figure out how it works, where it is, what the system is. And one of the big things that happened was the discovery of the chain of thought, like the reasoning models, the thinking models, which sort of self-prompt their way. And
Yeah.
if you get, and what's interesting is that you can and see the thinking happening. And this was something which, we at Vjal used to encourage all of our customers to do, because as you see the model thinking, you really understand how it's digesting the prompt, where it's going, and so you can become a much better at asking it what you want to do.
Yeah.
But it's also a great way to understand how the model works. And so you have Chinese companies, by the way, all the companies do it. Elon's, of course, on record saying, hey, even the US companies do it, et cetera, that where they sort of take their competitors' models, run them at scale, and pull out one, the traces of how they think, and B, distill their knowledge. So you take a big model, you answer very hard questions, and then you can distill that knowledge, distill how it works, and turn it into a smaller model. But
Yeah.
this is standard. I know Anthropic is pretty peeved about it, and they're trying to set it up as a US versus China thing. But I mean, it's here to stay. And unfortunately, Anthropic isn't the right messenger. I mean, one of the few companies that had a massive judgment against them for blatantly going out and taking a lot of intellectual property, buying millions of books, going after authors and pulling, and they actually finally got hit with the actual piracy notice, which is rare in the AI model world. So, they distilled the knowledge of all these authors without taking their permission, and
Yeah.
they're upset now about the Chinese doing it to their model. So it's kind of there is no moral high ground here. It's just interesting to watch how the ecosystems kind of develops, and how that race goes ahead.
Great. Well, look, I appreciate it. Look, one of the things I think I read too was that the next generation of AI, particularly with the agents, the way they're trained is a little bit different, and maybe distillation won't be as effective helping the scientists train those. But it'd be interesting to see where it heads. Good.
For sure, Mark. Look, we have rain, we have the diffusion models, which are the big ones this year. We have a lot of different methods coming up. So, if you're a state-of-the-art lab, you have a lot of options right now to go through. And I think that's not helping people, because they have to kind of bet on one or two or three major ones. It's really hard, just given, again, we just talked about the shortage of, training systems, the lack of talent in the marketplace that's really available to
Yeah.
put 10 or 20 bets. They have to pick one or two ones and go all out.
Yeah, I agree. Well, each week you regale us with a demo. I know you've been doing really cool stuff with Fable and agentic AI. What have you got for us today?
So I want to show you a screenshot, which I thought was cool. I wanted to show you it live, but thing moves so fast it's hard to even see. And so I realized when I was showing people, it was sort of going whew, too fast.
Yeah.
So I'm actually take a moment in time. And this is one of our simplistic screen. And for those of tech, this is this is Ghosty running with Oh My Pi, OMP, with a bunch of models. And what you're seeing here is, this is the sort of the Fable 5 main console right down here, right on
Mhm.
extra high, which is really burning tokens. And then you have these led by ChatGPT 5.5 high systems. At the moment here, we are running, at least behind the scenes, although it might not be obvious, about 350 agents simultaneously. And the nice part about Fable 5, which I thought was very unique, it kind of loves to orchestrate. And so literally you can tell it, hey, you're kind of like expensive, use all the other models. And you have these beautiful harnesses like OMP, which can, and by the even a Codex, even a Claude can do this very well. But pretty much, I've loaded about five different models. There's GLM5 there. There's Minimax. There's Gemini. There's Rock, and there's ChatGPT, and then you have Fable 5 controlling all of them and running all these sub-agents that you can see right here. And all of these are there. It runs with to-do lists. At the same time, you have it orchestrating other screens which are running separately, and they're running their own agents. And so you can create these beautiful orchestration agent protocols. Now, to be fair, I'm convinced about 50% of them are absolutely useless and doing nothing, which is I thought was a aha moment for me, again, as a real reflection of how Vijal sees how do you do massive agentic rollouts? It's pretty much more an HR issue and literally an HR issue in the terms of how do I manage a 500-person company, instantly, versus really a tech issue. How does information flow? How do they talk to each other? Who is the manager? Who is not the manager? Which model gets to be the one doing the work? Which one's the designer? And so it almost feels like you're hiring these agents, you're providing them with job descriptions, you're kind of giving them the roles. And so it's a whole orchestration method. But when it works, and this probably worked for about 2 to 3 days, with the help of Fable 5 being the push here, you get these beautiful, multi-hundred agent orchestrations that can really plow through a huge amount of work. So I thought this was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I've been trying some of the multi-agent workflows with Fable 5 too. Your free use of the Fable 5 will go away, but you can still use it via APIs. It's going to cost you more money. So,
Absolutely. And I know hopefully 5.6 is out then. So hope we can shift these to that.
okay, good. So last but not least, Addy, every week you regale us the story of some kind of client success story. I think we're going to talk about something from the legal domain. What do you got on your plate for today?
Oh, absolutely, Ma. And I love the legal domain because the large language models, legal as a language, it's an industry completely being reformed. Now, just to give people a quick 5-second thing on that, the legal industry over the last 15, 20 years has been going through a reformation. Many countries, Australia in particular, I think US and other might follow. So trying to convert what are known as traditional partner-based models to more joint stock companies. And we saw this with things like Goldman Sachs. We're seeing this, BlackRock, and we're seeing it with many of the legal firms trying to figure out, are we a partnership? Can we turn this into a standardized company and what that means for the profession? Some of this is regulatory. But the way it hits AI is that we have many law firms who come to us and say, okay, what we need to help is to figure out how do we build customers? How do we think about our junior associates? How we think about productivity? How do we think about all of this? One of my favorite client stories, and I love what these guys did with this, is they were very scared about AI, very scared about client data, proprietary data. Love that. Paranoia is usually a good thing. That's a great place to start. But you have to combine it with logical, rational thinking. And very rarely do we see clients who are super paranoid about data, but then are very clear-eyed. It's like, yeah, you use Microsoft 360 and you put all your emails on their servers where all your confidential information is, but you're not going to put it up on AI. So just those inconsistencies is something they didn't have. What I loved about these guys is they're still manual. We did the workflows, we did the agentic things, but they really wanted, the individual partners. They really wanted the associates to be driving things. And so, for us, this was a great thing. It was like, almost like the Codex moment there is that rather than creating, cross-company workflows, which is a traditional agentic thing where you're working with process and systems, the idea is how do we empower individual associates and individual lawyers with personal workflows and personal sets of agents to take this to the next level. And the results have been astounding. They have now standardized mini agents for each of their employees on their local systems, although connecting to ChatGPT or Claude through under high privacy and security. But they're able to eliminate 80-90% or what I would say was traditional grunt work, everything from initial analysis, just to a quality audit, branding and systems at the start. But now they're using it for deep search, checking papers for citations, making sure that nothing got missed out. And all lawyers use templates because that's the bread and butter of the entire system. These guys are, of course, the guys who build the templates as well. And so for them to be able to have a very senior partner in one geography create the perfect tax template for a tax law system, but then have it distribute to the entire company as knowledge through the agent, so other people can then query them without having to call that partner on the first go at least, is absolutely miraculous. And so for me, the great thing again was, opposed to traditional, by traditional, I mean last year, fully processed agent workflows, the focus was very much on individuals and how to empower them through their own custom agents. And, that I thought was a great way for high intellectual property firms and high people first firms to put their AI steps forward in a very, very nice, culturally appropriate way for them.
Yeah, in my in-person workshops with people, I like to say, look, if you're worried about AI replacing you, let's hope that doesn't happen. But one way to protect yourself is by turbocharging yourself by using AI. Basically, if you can get more effective, more productive, higher quality, then you're more protected than you were before. Yeah.
Absolutely. Nobody fires the person who's at 10x, right?
Yeah.
They're your guys, and it's kind of easy to get there if you just put in the effort a little bit.
All right, good. Well, Adi, thanks as always. Been a great recap. We'll be with you all every week. Please make sure you check out our website, Vjal.ai. We have over 400 trainers and coaches around the world. We do free for universities and high school. We do in-person workshops for companies and community groups, and we have a great 10-week coaching program for companies. So reach out to us, send us an email at outreach@vjal.ai, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you, Adi.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. See you next week.